Israel is installing some unique equipment on its Merkava tanks. I'm going to break down what I think it really is. And the United States appears to have asked Israel to delay its ground invasion a little longer. We're going to talk about why here in a second. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's October 26th, 2023. This is your daily unbiased Hamas-Israel update. Let's get into it. Okay, taking a look at the aggregated news update, you can see Israel ordering the evacuation of it's actually classifying the entire area within a kilometer of the border fence as a combat zone. So yikes. That's probably at least a step on the preparation to a ground invasion. And while the exact date and time isn't going to be publicly released, we'll find out when the tanks start rolling. We can bet that it is close by, given that, again, they're redesignated this as a combat zone, probably because it grants them administrative powers that normally wouldn't be allowed under regular rule of law. Now, there's also been some interesting statements here from the deputy head of the political bureau of Hamas, stating, quote, if the enemy, that's Israelis, enter by land, it will be a new and glorious page for our people. He's referring to Hamas or Palestinians, and a historic, unprecedented defeat for the occupation. You could see a classic propaganda move right here. Despite sitting in an office, he has his big old M4 right there, loaded up, which is just preposterous, right? This is a political leader. He doesn't need an M4. He certainly doesn't need to be wearing what looks like a Marine Corps MARPAT uniform. All of this is theatrics. And don't get me wrong, every politician is guilty of this. But I point this out because yesterday I talked about the fact that Hamas wants the Israelis to invade Gaza. They want to fight the Israelis on their territory, and they are almost certainly prepared for it, right? Are they more prepared than Israel? Well, that is the billion-dollar question right now. Also noteworthy is that according to some reports, Russia and China vetoed a U.S.-led Security Council resolution that condemns the Hamas October 7th attack, acknowledges Israel's right to defend itself, calls for the release of hostages, and for humanitarian aid to civilians in Gaza. They also rejected, of course, a Russian-led resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Only Russia, China, the UAE, and Gabon supported that resolution, which was rejected without the need for a U.S. veto. So, again, to me, Russia, China chronically just love to thwart and disrupt Western efforts in just about any facet they can. And certainly, this is fraught for a couple reasons, right? Russia and China both have their own problems with what they consider breakaway regions, right? Bear in mind, China believes that Taiwan, a breakaway region, the Taiwanese people shouldn't have a say in who rules them. They should be ruled by China. Russia, in turn, believes the Ukrainians shouldn't have a say in who rules them. They should be ruled by Russia. And so it's strange that they're then thwarting the international community when they try to assert that that the Palestinians don't have a right to self-determination. And then they make a resolution, calling for a ceasefire. Again, a long way from calling for the actual establishment or independent statehood for Palestinians. But I just want to point that out because oftentimes Russia and China look at the optics of an international situation on how they map onto their own and will align themselves accordingly. But in this instance, the West's sort of struggle to thread the needle between acknowledging the humanity of Palestinians and acknowledging the tragedy of the Israelis who were targeted by Hamas on October 7th, right? The West has really not looked very good in their response, right? It's like everything that they say is wrong. Supporting one isn't supporting the other. And so Russia and China love to see it. They definitely don't want the West to get on the same page because as they've seen, when Western countries get on the same page and stance about something, they're actually very effective. So again, humiliating the West trumps any ideology for certainly these countries. Now, here's what's interesting, right? We have two statements from Netanyahu saying, one, he said, we were preparing for ground entry. He means a ground invasion of Gaza. The timing of the action was determined by the war cabinet together with the chief of staff. Now, that is in direct response to, let's see if we can find it here, to a Wall Street Journal leak that says that Israel agreed to a request by the U.S. to postpone the ground invasion of Gaza pending the establishment of air defenses to protect American soldiers in the region. This is because there have been dozens of attacks against U.S. forces stationed in Iraq and Syria. And the U.S. has acknowledged they need more robust and advanced air defenses on these bases before the attacks step up in complexity or frequency. 25 U.S. soldiers or servicemen have been wounded in these attacks. The vast majority, according to one report, have been returned to duty, but it would be a really bad look if U.S. service members were to start being killed. The U.S. public may demand action in response to this, and that would be a definite escalation of the conflict. But so the U.S. wants to, before things get more escalatory within Israel, they want to make sure they have their best air defenses ready to protect American soldiers within the region. So again, it's interesting because this says Israel had terms dictated to it by the United States, or a request, and Netanyahu wants to establish to his voting public that the timing is determined by the war cabinet with the chief of staff. Now, bear in mind, the chief of staff, right, the chief of staff is going to listen to a lot of different factors. And when one of your largest international supporters makes a request, the chief of staff is going to weigh that considerably. So it's one of those things where both of these statements can be true, even if they sound contradictory on the surface. Now, I want to talk about this image here. This is pretty interesting stuff because it is from Getty Images, but it is a Marava tank. And the Marava is interesting for a couple of reasons. First off, it's an Israeli-built tank. It's been around for at least 20 years, I think. But it has a reputation of being one of the best main battle tanks in the modern era. However, what I thought was interesting, as they pointed out, is that there appear to be soundproofing foam on the sides here, right? Now it's tough to see in this image. Let's see if I can save it and blow it up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Okay. So here, right, take a look, right? These look like soundproofing foam, but I think they are not. I think these are actually metal or tungsten plates. And the reason is because you notice the Marava's armor. It's super angular. That's because Marava is one of the biggest threats it faces isn't necessarily other tanks. It's designed just as much for fighting against irregular insurgent forces like Hezbollah and Hamas. So its armor is incredibly angular. It's meant to deflect and prevent RPGs and other anti-tank weapons from getting a clean shot flush against the armor. And you see it's very well designed for that purpose. The turret is as flat as you can get it, but it's got a weak spot. It's right here, the treads. You can see this is flat. These are flattened armor plates, and the treads themselves. That's the most vulnerable point on the tank if you're trying to get a flush shot with an RPG. So how do you stop an RPG? Well, the U.S. would use these things called RPG nets in Afghanistan, and they were kind of effective. Let's see if I can find a picture. They were effective for what they were, which was field expedient. Here's let's see if we can find a bigger one. Field expedient bolt-on armor. I mean, there you go. This is what we had to drive, and you can imagine how unwieldy and just absolutely not at all feasible these things were to operate. But the idea was that all of this netting, there's little metal studs, and an RPG would hit it, and it would detonate the RPG prematurely because the RPG needs to touch the armor, and then it forms a sort of shape charge that penetrates into the armor. Well, the problem is that if that shape charge forms in air, it's going, and especially against something like that stud, it's going to not form the right shape. The shape is going to form prematurely, and it's going to smack ineffectively against the armor. Well, here is a more, I believe it's a more advanced version of that armor, right? Of those RPG nets. So instead of metal studs hung on the MRAP, they actually instead have spikes, right? And these spikes have little air pockets so that when the RPG hits it and tries to form that molten core that's going to penetrate the tank's armor. Well, there's all these there's bubbles in it, and the bubbles prevent it from forming a true shaped charge, and therefore it disperses it, not harmlessly, but it protects the tank, and more importantly, protects the crew against the armor anti-tank round. So that's what I believe we're looking at here. We're looking, again, the Israelis willing and able to design technologically advanced systems at a pretty good clip. And having these stapled onto the Merkava probably potentially going to save lives, or at least keep these tanks in the fight longer and deter RPGs and other anti-tank weapons that Hamas might fire at them. Anyway, guys, that's really all I had for you. If you're interested in checking out some of the more edgy combat footage, this is the stuff that I can't show on YouTube. It's not pointlessly graphic, but it's where I do the analysis of the ground view of the combat. We do it for Ukraine, and we do it for Israel Hamas. And when this ground invasion starts, you're going to want to get this exclusive coverage. So this is also the best way to support the channel on here. It's combatvetnews.com. It's my site. I own the whole thing soup to nuts. I can't get canceled on it. Advertisers don't really like me covering this content, but I think there's value in it. So if you want to support me and the team, any one of these tiers will do it. Of course, the lieutenant and colonel tiers are going to get you a shout out at the end of the video, and I appreciate it, but you'll get an exclusive room on the Discord, plus, again, access to the videos, one of which is dropping today. So you should definitely check it out. Anyway, that's all I had, guys. Be sure, again, thanks to all the colonel tier members at combatvetnews.com. Thanks to all of our lieutenant tier members. And of course, thanks to all the members of Combat Vet News. I really couldn't do this without you guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all in the next one. Cheers.